Last night, the Pistons Hornets game wasn't just a game. It was a statement across the league. You had the red-hot Charlotte Hornets on a 9-game win streak, looking to win 10 in a row and tie their franchise record against the best team in the East record-wise, the Detroit Pistons, a team that is built on grit and determination. And those two things came to a head in one of the biggest scuffles we have seen in the NBA in a long time. And while yes, the Detroit Pistons did end up getting the dub last night, when the dust settled, I think I saw something way more important. The Charlotte Hornets are done being disrespected in the Eastern Conference. But very quickly before we get into this video, if you guys enjoy this type of content, all things NBA, please make sure to hit that like button on this video. And also, if you guys want to stick around, join my community, please hit that subscribe button. I'm on the road to 1,000 subscribers, trying to get monetized here on YouTube. And so right now, any subscription means the world to me. Also, make sure to comment down below your thoughts on the Detroit versus Charlotte game last night, and also your thoughts on the Charlotte Hornets as a whole. But with all that out of the way, let's talk hoops. Last night's game was a game that I was actually looking forward to a lot because, you know, you have my favorite team, the Detroit Pistons, the best team in the East, going up against the Charlotte Hornets, the hottest team in the East, on a 9-game win streak. And so, you know, for me, I was very excited to see how the Charlotte Hornets stacked up to the Detroit Pistons. And if it was a show I wanted, it was a show I got. Because that game turned into a WWE Raw SmackDown event in the third quarter. And you know, I talked some shit on Twitter last night, but when the dust settled and the emotions and the adrenaline went back down, you know, I kind of realized this Charlotte Hornets team is kind of legit. The Pistons got the W, but Charlotte didn't look like a bottom tier team. The Hornets aren't rolling over anymore. You know, this is a team that's been trending up for weeks. So if you've been living under a rock for like the last 2 to 3 weeks, the Charlotte Hornets are now 9-1 in their last 10 games. And going into last night, you know, they were on a 9-game win streak, one away from tying their franchise record. This was a team that at one point in this season was 16-28 and are now sitting at 25-29 in a play-in spot in the Eastern Conference. And what I see is it's mainly due to their offensive jump. In their last 10 games, the Charlotte Hornets are second in the league in offensive rating. But what exactly is fueling not only the offensive jump, but just the jump of the team as a whole? And I think it comes down to a multitude of players on the Hornets, and also the Hornets finally realizing how to play all these guys together to find success. You know, let's start with LaMelo Ball. Now, if you were to look at LaMelo Ball's stats, statistically and points-wise, he is having his worst year since his rookie season. And if you're a LaMelo Ball fan, you know, you might look at that and be like, oh man, that kind of sucks. But it's actually a good thing because LaMelo Ball has never been known as being an efficient player. And he's always been like the main usage, the main driver, the main guy shooting shots for this Charlotte Hornets team. And so when you have a guy who's the focal point of an offense, but is also inefficient when it comes to shooting, sometimes makes some questionable passes, over dribbles every once in a while, or over dribbles a lot, kind of, that's not going to be a recipe for success. But this season, it looks like LaMelo has finally kind of taken a step down with offensive responsibilities and has kind of delegated some of that to his other teammates because, you know, he's only averaging 19.2 points per game, but he's also averaging about 4 less shots per game than he has in his last 3 seasons. Now, unfortunately, he still is only shooting barely over 40%, which is not what you want to see, but at least he's not taking as many shots anymore. He's letting his other teammates get more shots. But LaMelo's been able to take a step back on the offensive responsibility because of guys like Brandon Miller. Brandon Miller in this stretch has been amazing for the Charlotte Hornets, basically a 20-point per game scorer every single night. You know, recently his shooting percentages have kind of dropped. He's down to shooting like 30 or 40% in his last 3 or 4 games. But before that, he was scoring 20 points per game on at least 50% every single night. And so again, being able to take some of that responsibility from LaMelo and put it on Brandon Miller and have a more high efficient scorer getting more shots up, that is only going to help the Charlotte Hornets on offense. Not to mention Brandon Miller and LaMelo have been pretty available for the Charlotte Hornets so far this year, where in the past, they've had seasons where they've missed a large chunk of time because of injury. And so having them both out there, for a long stint allows them to build chemistry not only between them, but also around the entire team and play better together. But you can't talk about great offensive players on this team without talking about the rookie Con Knipple. Con Knipple, in my opinion, 9 out of 10 years is the runaway rookie of the year. But unfortunately, this season, he is fighting with a guy named Cooper Flagg, who recently has looked like anything but a rookie. He looks more like an established player in this league. But it's important not to discredit how great Con Knipple has been for this Hornets squad, and I think was the missing piece. Because you could have 2 great offensive players, but now you bring in a third. That just takes even more responsibility off both of their shoulders, and Con Knipple has shouldered that responsibility very well. There's a reason why there were murmurs earlier in the year that the Hornets wanted to build the team around him instead of LaMelo or instead of Brandon Miller, because he's been just that good in his rookie season. And so now you take an immense offensive responsibility that only rested on LaMelo's shoulders in the last couple years, and now you can evenly split it across 3 different players. That makes it so much easier on offense and so much easier for these players to just play in their game and be able to flow better. And ultimately, the Hornets, getting more offensive players to take the burden off of LaMelo, I think 100% is the reason why they're one of the best offensive teams in the league in this recent stretch. And then there's Miles Bridges, who beats women. That's really all I have to say about Miles Bridges. But I think an underrated dude on this squad that nobody is talking about is Grant Williams. Grant Williams has been unavailable due to injury for the entire season for the Charlotte Hornets squad, and just recently came back. And when you look at the stats of Grant Williams, they don't look good at all. But he is one of those guys that is an impact player, not on the stat sheet. There were so many times in that Pistons Hornets game last night where I saw Grant Williams kind of getting the team together and, talking them through stuff, leading them, making sure they stay composed and they don't freak out when the Pistons go on a run and they just play within themselves. That is a key guy that every NBA team needs. It doesn't matter his impact on the stat sheet, because his impact off the stat sheet means so much more. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Grant Williams came back, and a couple games after his return, the Charlotte Hornets go on this massive win streak. And then the last 2 guys I want to talk about are the big men down low for the Hornets. Moussa Diabate is somebody who I was familiar with before he went to the NBA, because I'm a Michigan basketball fan and that's where he went to college. And what I saw was he was a very raw big man in college, and I was kind of surprised when he went to the league as quickly as he did. But he has notched out a great position for himself in this league as a center who doesn't need to score and just can rebound, play defense, and be an imposing force. And, although he was taking swings at my boy Jalen Duren, I do respect Moussa Diabate's game because he is a junkyard dog out there. And then off the bench, another rookie, Ryan Kalkbrenner, is very similar to Diabate in the sense that his impact out there is not in the scoring column. It is in the rebounding column. It is in the block column. And so when you have a team of just pure offensive talents, LaMelo Ball, pure offense, Brandon Miller, pure offense, Con Knipple, pure offense. If you were to bring in a center that needed touches and needed to be a part of the offense, it just wouldn't fit. There would be too many mouths to feed. But now you have 2 centers that don't need the ball in their hands in order to be effective. They can be effective in every other way. And I think, those 2 guys are the key to the Charlotte Hornets not falling apart on defense. The Hornets are a top 10 team in defensive rating in the last 10 games, and I think key players like Grant Williams, like Diabate, and like Kalkbrenner are the reason for that. And so while, yes, the Charlotte Hornets did lose against the Detroit Pistons, this game still matters a ton for them, because even going up against the best team in the East, the habits that we've seen over these last couple weeks were still there. Even when Diabate and Bridges got ejected, they still, didn't lose their composure, and they played their hardest. The fans were in it. The stadium was loud in the fourth quarter. So what does this mean going forward for the Charlotte Hornets? Well, if I'm a Charlotte Hornets fan, I'm pretty happy right now. We're making a push towards the playoff, especially in a season where we've seen, the trade deadline end and like 7 different teams just decide that they're going to tank. The Charlotte Hornets, took the noble route, and they said, no, we're going to try and win, guys. We want to make the playoffs. And now they have a real core, with LaMelo, with Brandon Miller, with Con Knipple. These are 3 guys that you can build a very competent offense around. I think LaMelo is kind of better in like a second or third option scoring role and more of a facilitator, where you have Brandon Miller and Con Knipple being the main scorers. But I think that's a recipe for success, and we've seen it. It has been a recipe for success. The Hornets are 9-1 in their last 10, and it doesn't look like the Hornets are wanting to slow down right now. It looks like they want to make the play-in tournament. And personally, especially with the fight last night and now the history and the bad blood between the Pistons and the Hornets, I think a playoff series, the 1 seed Pistons against the 8 seed Charlotte Hornets, I would really enjoy seeing that first round. I think the Pistons would win, obviously, but I still think it would just be a very entertaining series. But I think overall, after seeing what the Charlotte Hornets have done over these last couple weeks, as well as, how hard they played the Detroit Pistons last night, I think the Charlotte Hornets' future is a lot brighter than a lot of us once thought. But that's really all I got for this video today, guys. If you guys have made it this far, if you guys are still watching, first of all, thank you guys so much for watching the whole video. But second of all, smash that like button. You guys have made it to the end. You obviously enjoyed the video, so hit the like button. Also, again, if you guys want to stick around, see more of my content, join my community, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I would love to have you. Also, again, make sure to comment down below your thoughts on the game last night, as well as the Charlotte Hornets as a whole. What do you think about them? Are they legit? And lastly, if you guys want to see more of my content, YouTube actually thinks you'll really like this video right here. So once this video wraps up, make sure to click on that video and you can see another piece of great NBA content that I'm sure you'll enjoy. But with all that being said, guys, as always, peace and love.